Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Arachnids in the UK, written by Chris Chibnall and is directed by, I believe it's pronounced Sally Amrahaman? Abrahaman? I completely butchered that last name, but her first name is Sally. This is the return to Sheffield, modern day Sheffield, and is a much more lighter tone in terms of the type of stuff that we're tackling here compared to the previous 3 episodes in the run of Doctor Who so far. If the last 3 episodes, though this story does deal with heavier themes, which we get onto when we talk about Graham, the story is mainly about a light-hearted, well, not light-hearted, but is much more like a mystery thriller, fun adventure compared to the previous episodes in Doctor Who of this era of the show so far. It sees some really big guest stars, namely Chris Nosh, who plays Jack Robinson here, who becomes a regular recurring character. When I say regular, he appears like in another episode after this. I can't remember what the episode is, but anyway, as well as Sabona Galata, I believe her name is pronounced. I've butchered that name. Who plays Yaz's mum in this story, and she is like a big soap drama actress. I believe she was in Coronation Street or Emmerdale. It's one of those two. So yeah, one of the big factors of this story is that it features giant spiders, an idea that Doctor Who has tackled before in Planet of the Spiders, John Pertwee's last story, 44 years prior. This story actually has a lot of scientific elements regarding spiders and their habitats and their biology. This story actually had a zoologist, Dr. Neil Doran, work on the narrative, on the story. So the scientific elements of this story are much more realistic than your average episode of Doctor Who, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Now, before I get onto the story, as you can see, I've printed off my own classic style Doctor Who DVD cover. This is by Matthew Purchase. I think the last one I talked about, the one I did the cover, I said it was by Christopher DVDs, but I believe I was mistaken. This one's by Matthew Purchase, which is really cool. I do have the official release. However, I can't remember where I put the box art for it. But anyway, this is the cover of it with a really nice artwork be here. Here is the spine, if anyone's interested, be there. And here is the back, which I've put the Tranmere Conundrum and Demons of the Punjab as special features, because this was the first story on this disc. So yeah, back in Sheffield, we've got giant spiders to begin to the narrative. But is it any good? Well, the story starts off with basically we're learning about giant spiders. There seems to be some sort of mystery going around in this multi-million hotel kind of thing, this luxury hotel run by Jack Robinson, Chris Nosh's character, and he's trying to cover up something with his secretary woman. There's a really strange detail where they mention that the secretary is his niece's wife. Like, I get the idea that, like, you know, he's a character that is, you know, more self and really just gets people like close family, but it just felt like a really strange, like, hey, here's a bit of Wikipedia information for you. This character is clearly being inspired by the real life president at the time, Donald Trump, which is really strange because in the previous episode, Rosa, there's a scene where they could have clearly mentioned Donald Trump and did not, only for this episode to have a Donald Trump stand-in into this narrative. Yeah, it's very strange. It is very, very strange, and he's clearly the antagonist, or at least one of the main antagonists of the story. As the Doctor, Yaz, Ryan, and Graham I called him Brian in the last episode. It just clicked. Oh, that's really bad. Graham, and they're all back on Sheffield. And there's a great sweet moment where the doctor's just like, right, I've got you home. Now it's time to say goodbye. I guess I'm travelling on my own. To which Yaz is just like, hey, do you want to come on to, come in the TARDIS? Do you want to come home, have food with my house? And the doctor's like, yeah, fire, yeah. And then he's excited to meet up as Ryan goes with the girls as well. However, Graham decides that he's going to go home. And there's this emotional hook where clearly, despite it being 3 episodes later, he's still not after he still hasn't really fully recovered from the passing of Grace. And there's these great like moments where he's talking to an apparition of her in the house. And you really get the hit of that character insert. It's not a big narrative focus. It's not a big thing in terms of the story. However, it does let you emotionally hooked with this character played by Bradley Walsh. We get introduced to the rest of Yaz's family with her father and her sister living in a flat. And there's something happening in the flat, the house next door, shall we say. And Yaz's father's like eccentric. He loves this conspiracy. He's got a conspiracy about something to do with waste. And Yaz's sister is a little brat who's more focused into her life. There seems to be hints, seems to be little suggestions that Yaz and her family, she has a kind of the issue with her family. When they arrive at Sheffield, Yaz looks at her phone and realizes that there's no messages, not realizing that she's only been gone in an hour in Sheffield time. Sheffield time, I like that. And she's just like, oh, no messages. That's just normal. Like always, or something like that, she says. Basically implying that, there's some sort of issue with the family relationship. It's not a big deal here, and we'll get onto that about Yaz's character for a moment later on. But that is a idea in Doctor Who which will be more focused, more heavily put upon in a story in the next series. But for now, let's talk about this. As we basically learn that Nadia, Yaz's mother, works at the hotel where Robertson is at, to which he fires her because she interrupted a meeting between him and his secretary / his wife. And he basically is clearly trying to cover up something. But as this is going around, as the Doctor will learn, trying to get information from somebody who's knocking on the door next door, Dr. Jade McEdam, I'm just going to call her Jade, played by Tanya Fear, who's trying to get to the next door, and the Doctor investigates, only to discover that in that room there are giant cobwebs, and there is a massive spider, probably the size from one of my shoulders to the other. And there's this like massive threat around Sheffield about these giant spiders, which all culminate into the hotel. The hotel is the epicenter of this massive arachnid conspiracy. As we learn through Dr. Jade, who's actually a zoologist who experiments on arachnid creatures to try and study their enhanced abilities, mainly to do with webbing, that there is this kind of strange thing that's going around in Sheffield where all the spider life seems to be disturbed. They're not acting normally. They're not acting as they should be, and they don't know if it's fear, if it's terrifying, or if they're confused or somewhat. But something is upset in the ecosystem, and it has something to do with the hotel, which they go in to investigate. And then the main story is set within this hotel, and it basically becomes a haunted hotel kind of story where our characters are trapped in this hotel, and the Doctor has to try and organise. It's basically a base under siege story, a very classic trope in Doctor Who canonically, mainly in stories regarding the second Doctor. However, there have been other stories throughout Doctor Who's history which are considered base under siege stories. And this is basically the first 13th Doctor bus story. And there was one thing that really bugged me throughout the entire episode. This is not really a criticism on the story, but it's something that really bugged me as a fan. The Doctor encounters giant spiders and does not make any connection to her previous encounter with giant spiders. It felt really strange how Planet of the Spiders is never mentioned. Nothing, like, she doesn't mention, oh, could these be the 8 legs? Could this be the takeover of those spiders? Has anybody experienced some sort of psychic connection? Nothing. I mean, it's not really a problem because it isn't actually connected to Planet of the Spiders at all. These spiders are completely different from those that we've seen in Planet of the Spiders 44 years ago. But it just felt really strange to me as a Doctor Who fan, because Planet of the Spiders is a big part of Doctor Who chronology. It's the final appearance of the 3rd Doctor and the regeneration into the 4th. And it's like the villains are so well, like they're so similar, giant spiders, roughly the same size. And like the Doctor doesn't bring it up at all. Like I said, it's not a criticism, it's a very strange predicament. But let's get on to our characters. The Doctor basically takes in charge of the team, and she has some really great fun moments. Mainly in this story, she is mainly with her companions. She's mainly surrounded with a group of people, meaning that the 13th Doctor is full on that quirky Doctor, which is much more inspired by the 11th, the 4th, and the 2nd Doctors, which and we don't really get that darker side of the Doctor, with the exception of a few little glimpses when she is essentially assaulting Robinson. And like the 13th Doctor isn't really like the main focus, the main grip hook on this story. But she is, like, you know, the scientific aspect, and she really does push the team together. Jodie Whittaker absolutely nails the role. But yeah, here we don't really, because she's with her companions constantly and she's on that quirky moment. The stuff that I'm personally interested in the 13th Doctor isn't here. It's mainly just like a traditional 13th Doctor adventure in terms of her characterization, if that makes any sense. Ryan actually gets some really great scenes here. There's this whole thing where when Graham goes to the house, he finds a letter from Ryan's father, and there's these small little emotional moments between the two. There's a great moment where he's like, his father's telling he can come home now that like he's the only proper family, and he says he doesn't like the proper family remark, trying to imply something with Graham, and it, you know, it kind of did hit them hard. There's also a really fun moment where he starts blasting music to try and get the spider's attention. Now that kind of music that he plays, that kind of like urban rap, modern rap music, is something that I'm not personally keen on. However, I think the story is justified in using it because it does seem like something that Ryan would listen to. It does seem like someone that, you know, a person from Sheffield would listen to, and Ryan just like Tulsi Cole really gets the enjoyment out of it. It does generally feel like you know, it's a little bit of character moment for him. He gets to play like his massive music that gets to save the day. And I love Graham's remark. It's like, can you really believe they're going to that music? Yaz is a strange element in this story. This story is mainly focused around in terms of the wider story. The story is more connected with her. They go and see her family. one of the main characters in the story is her mother, and it's revolving around where her mother's works and stuff. But the story itself doesn't really give Yaz much to do. There's this whole thing that Yaz's mother's trying to work out her relationship with the Doctor and Ryan, if they're like in a relationship or something. There seems to be some sort of hint that she at least likes one of them, which we later learn way later down the line, 2 series after. But this was really strange. Like, what really bugs me about Yaz in the story is that, despite all this, she really doesn't have a president into the story. She's really there to bring the emotional aspects out of her mother. Though there is this kind of element about her that, like, you know, she isn't comfortable with her family. It's mainly put to the backbone to focus on the spider adventure, as well as, it's really strange because she's a police officer. However, that's never like a part of the story. She never takes in charge. She never uses her police skills, her police tactics to encourage anybody or to take control of a certain situation, especially in situations which regard quick actions. Like, why? She's a police. One of her big character traits in The Woman Who Fell to Earth is that she's a policewoman. But apart from that story, like, you couldn't tell. It doesn't make any difference in terms of the narrative. And it was a real shame because that's a really interesting aspect to her in the TARDIS crew. And so far, Series 11 hasn't taken advantage, at least full advantage of it, in any of the stories. So let's now get into our characters from the rest of the scenes. We've got Jack Robinson, who, like I said, is the Donald Trump stand-in. Now, the story, you know, has elements where it tackles like Donald Trumpisms, where he's lazy, he puts essentially the blame on anybody else that he can, and he's so full of himself, and it just wants everybody to appreciate him without any the work that anyone else has gotten onto. Provenly a coward, provenly a scum of a person. But the big question is, why this story to do a Trump allegory? The story really, in terms of the main focus of the narrative, has nothing to do with anything Trump related. And though I do understand this point of view, I do understand that he's a fun, villainous character in the story. And he really brings the tension in this small crew. He just feels like a really odd character to put in. One thing I will say, which I don't know if this is a controversial opinion or not, but Chris Nosh, who is mostly known for his role in Sex in the City, I don't think this is his best performance. In fact, certain bits, I laughed at just how over the top and silly they are. I get that's the point, Donald Trump, blah 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 blah. But sometimes it felt really unintentional, and felt like they didn't really know what to do with him. One really weird bit of directing, of scene staging and acting, is when he washes his hands and he's really and he does this. It's comical. It's very, very comical. Now let's get on to Dr. Jade. She kind of gets background, shall we say, to the rest of the cast. She's mainly there to explain the scientific elements of the story. She hasn't really got much there. However, Tanya Fear really gives this despite her she being a very minor character, there's something about Tanya Fear working with Jodie Whittaker, their performance, and they're showing their pattern of spiders, and she's using it to the team's advantage. And she is disgusted, but she also has these care for these spiders as well. I don't know. It's a very minor role, and she doesn't really have much to do or much to say in terms of the narrative. But I just really like the character, and I wish the character returned. Tanya Fear, if you're listening to this, please return to Doctor Who. great actress. Like, I don't know, it's just, maybe I just, the acting I like, but I don't know, it just, something about her performance really just, not got to me, because she didn't have like any big emotional scenes, but like, I don't know, I just found her a very fun, interactive character. And now, I really think I've talked about much about the character, so let's like wrap it up. We basically learned that Nora Robinson's basically have like a minefield underneath the hotel, and it's building up all of these fumes and this toxic waste, and it's basically a political allegory for climate change, or at least like this kind of like climate pollution storyline, which I don't think the story really earned. And we basically also learned that there's this giant spider in the main ballroom. The characters, as by Ryan using the music, which I stated earlier, they trap all the spiders in the hotel. The average size spider, well, I say average, the baby spiders, shall I say, into Robinson's safe room. Which, it's strange because they act like that's stopped them. However, it was stated early on in the story that these spiders are appearing everywhere in Sheffield. So it doesn't really solve anything, but that's beside the point. And they go to basically try and stop the giant spider in the ballroom. However, the ballroom spider, this massive van-sized spider, seems to be suffocating because she's grown too big that her lungs have basically like collapsed under itself and she can't breathe properly. And the characters are like watching it, it's like, I'm so sorry, only for Jack Robinson to shoot it violently and stating that, you know, he's going to become the next president of America. And he walks off of the story, just randomly just like walks off, and then that's it for him. Really strange bit of narrative focus. And the story ends in a scene which I really do love, in which our companions, they come to the doctor and it's like, right, we've decided that we are actually going to stay. We're going to travel with you. With Ryan and Graham, Graham anyway, Sheffield has this kind of effect on him that's constantly reminding him of Grace, and he has this kind of grief that you know, he can't move on, and he thinks traveling with the doctor is helping, and Ryan just doesn't want to go back to work. Very Ryan. And Yaz, like, her family drives her wild, so she's coming back. But what I really do like about the scene, which makes it very unique in the history of Doctor Who, is that the Doctor, you know, takes on friends and like companions along the way. Usually it's a case of, you want to travel with me? Okay, hop aboard. You know, you were fun. Come with me. It could be dangerous. Yeah, okay. Bye. But in this story, it has a very unique like aspect of the 13th Doctor where she really, like, you know, stands her ground and says, like, this is dangerous. You are not going to be the same people. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? She's warning her companions. This is actually kind of character growth for the Doctor, who would usually just like kind of like take characters and has no hesitation. This could be an aspect of continuity where Bill, a character he kind of just takes on because he sees something in her and doesn't really like warn her, but basically like explains like there's all this adventure and stuff, only for her to be killed due to the actions of her being in the TARDIS team and being the Doctor, allowing her to be in so much danger. And that is a big element, and you kind of do feel it in this scene where the Doctor's like, okay, you're absolutely sure. It's not, I cannot guarantee your safety. Are you sure? Are you 100% sure you want to join? That's a bit of like an emotional growth for the character. And that is Arachnids in the UK. Overall, so far it's the weaker stories of Series 11, but it's alright. It's mainly a fun spider story. If you could watch it with that mindset, you're going to have a good time with some characters, you know, you do bond, not bond with, but you do kind of connect with a way that you don't want to see any of them really harmed. I do wish there was more deaths in the story. Apart from red shirts, like nobody really has any big consequences due to this story. And there's not really much like meat to the story. There's not a lot. It's just kind of a quirky story with certain elements, but they don't really like hold up. If you're looking for anything more than that, if you're looking for a much more, you know, thought-provoking story, or like a true grit Doctor Who story, you may want to pass with this one. So that's Arachnids in the UK. So join me next time where the Doctor will be taking our characters to a futuristic junkyard, only for them to get injured and be taken into a hospital ship. But something is terrorising the crew. So join me next time for the Conundrum. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.